Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, September 9th, 2024. I am the board chair, Eric Eldridge. The following meeting is being recorded and broadcast by Tyngsborough Media. The meeting is available through our local cable access channels on Xfinity and Verizon Fios and as a live stream on our website, www.tyngsboroughma.gov. A recording of this meeting will be available through the video on demand portion of our website. Open meeting laws require that any member of the audience who intends on recording either video or audio so declare that now. Seeing none, after instruction from the State Fire Marshal and the Tyngsborough Fire Chief, in the event of an emergency, there is an exit directly across from me at the rear of the room and one to my left. With that, I would like to ask all of those who can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll go to board introductions, starting from my left.
Good evening, Jacqueline Schnackertz, Executive Assistant.
Good evening, Ron Schneider.
Good evening, Jackie Gilfus.
Good evening, Ron Cohane.
Good evening, Colin Loisel, Town Manager.
Good evening, Kat Foster, Assistant Town Manager.
And I would like to welcome back
Yes.
Kat Foster to the meeting. So great to see you. All right. We're going to tweak the agenda a little bit. After citizens' business time, we're going to push down the town manager's report so that the folks in the audience will get those items addressed before we go into town manager's report and our other new business. So with that, I will take a motion on meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the regular session meeting minutes for review and approval for August 26th, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That carries 4-0-0.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the executive session meeting minutes for review, approval, but not release for August 26th, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Abstain.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
That carries 3-0-1. Okay. Citizen and business time. If there are any citizens who would like to address the board, ask them to come up. Come on up, sir. If you can come up to a microphone, have a seat, give us your name and address, and then the floor is yours.
My name is Paul Chisuk. I live at 81 Farwell Road here in Tyngsborough. I'd like to address the hazmat collection issue. 8:30 Saturday morning, I decided to get up there early and get in line. The line was about halfway between Bryant Lane and the church. I decided I didn't want to wait in that line. I'll wait until the crowd diminishes. I'll go home, have breakfast, come back. I came back about 10 o'clock. The line was still approximately halfway between Bryant and the church. So I decided, okay, I'll wait it out. It's got to move along. A lot of cars behind me and in front of me, and a lot of cars were coming down and going up Kendall Road. Very tight, with all the cars parked along the side. I don't know how many cars were parked, but I know myself I did not stop my engine. I sat there and idled. And apparently a lot of other cars were sitting there idling. By the time I got to the entry to the highway department, I didn't check my clock. I did check my clock when I started, when I got into line. Got into the service and proceeded through the line to the final pickup of the hazmat that I had. It took 1 hour and 4 minutes. That was 1 hour and 4 minutes of my car idling, and I don't know how many other cars. It had to be at least 100 or maybe 200, I don't know. You could probably get a better count on that. If we're concerned about hazardous materials getting into the environment, I would suggest you take a serious look at a couple of hundred cars sitting idling for an hour. We don't need the extra carbon dioxide. We don't need the waste of gasoline. Something needs to be looked at in the hazmat collection, perhaps a different area, a different way of doing it, but it has to be a shorter time. That's all I have to say. I thank you for listening, and good evening.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming in. Are there any other residents who wish to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to new business. Let's start with 5A, modification of outdoor seating, Epigram Brewery Company at 394 Middlesex Road. Jackie.
Thank you. Included in your packet this evening is a request for a permanent modification of a Section 12 license for all alcohol beverages and a common vic license from Jeff White of Epigram Brew Company located at 394 Middlesex Road in Tyngsborough. The applicant is seeking to modify their current Section 12 all alcohol beverage license to include an expanded outdoor area in the front parking lot, access from the front door and sidewalk, and also in the rear parking lot, access off the existing outdoor patio. The hours the extended patio will be open are Wednesday through Saturday from 11 until 10 and Sunday from 11 to 9 p.m. The applicant intends to use the expanded area for beverage and food service during car shows every other month, with some additional events being planned which will utilize the noted rear parking lot area. There will be no vehicular traffic crossing into these areas while in use for these events. The area will be sectioned off using cones and rope during events. As you remember, Governor Maura Healey signed a new law this spring allowing local licensing authorities the authority to approve modifications of premises to allow for outdoor patio service of food and alcoholic beverages without the ABCC approval. A copy of the Tyngsborough Select Board policy is attached for your reference. The applicant mailed notices to abutters by certified mail on August 29th, 2024, and has included a proposed floor plan with the application. Comments were requested from all relevant departments, and the comments are included in your materials. There were no adverse comments. The Board of Health reminds the applicant that doors cannot remain open.
Thank you. And I understand the applicant is here. Did you want to add anything?
Just more of a clarification, and I apologize if I screwed up in that write-up. This is stemming from really the car shows we've been having every other Wednesday. We've been having some pretty good success. More and more cars are showing up. A lot of the feedback from patrons inside the building and the people that are participating in the car shows, they'd like to bring a beverage outside and walk around and see the cars. So that's really what this stems from. Right now, we do hold that every other Wednesday. We're totally fine with the hours and limiting that, whatever the rules are. We will be roping off and sectioning off, but this will be every other week to start just in the front parking lot, and we wanted to add the back parking lot in case we wanted to use that for like maybe an Oktoberfest or a year-end party, something like that. But just want to clarify a little bit.
Thank you. All right, I'll open it up to the board for any questions. Did you want to start?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you. I do have some questions. I'm thrilled about this. I'm very excited. I love the design. I logistically am a little bit confused. Your explanation just then made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like being able to leave the building with a beer and walk around, like that makes sense. Looking at the map and the red lines, the way that it's drawn, if we're not anticipating vehicular traffic, but I presume that for a car show, they're walking around within the cars that are parked, right?
Yeah, so specifically the front lot, yeah, the cars would come in at one time.
Yep.
And then we would section it off and rope it off, like where the red line is, so no more vehicular traffic would be coming in or out during that time. At that point, we would allow people to come out with a beverage, walk around, and then just go back through the front door, so there's no other cars. We would utilize the south entry.
Yep.
Into the parking lot for cars entering and exiting.
Okay, so there's sort of like a set expectation of your car arrives during this window.
Correct.
Park, and then people will be milling around.
Correct.
Great, that was really my concern.
Thank you.
Oh, and there's no like expectation of like waitress service out there. It's, people will be buying things at the bar and then bringing it out.
Correct. It was talked about in one of our weekly meetings recently of maybe, we have, like kegerators, so we do have service we can actually put out there if it made sense. But no, we're not having seating out there and full service, no.
Great.
Mr. Cohen?
I'm glad it's been very successful, your Wednesdays, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors on Wednesday and the rest of the week.
Thank you.
The only question I had is, are you going to have, is it going to be glass out there? Are they going to, are you
No,
going to
we've
give them
got
plastic?
16-ounce plastic cups for outside, yes.
Got it, yeah, I figured logistically around the cars and all that, you
100%.
probably did not want to be dealing with that.
Yep.
Great idea. And then, is there going to be anything, any supervision there that says somebody can't then take their drinks out? It's a little bit harder for you because you're selling beer as well to go, you know, not drinks to go, but you're selling beer to go, so
Yeah.
I don't know how logistically you're going to deal with that.
Yeah, it'll be coaching the staff, and we'll have signage out there probably on these cones that we're gonna be put around, like no alcohol beyond this point. We'll teach our staff when they serve people in the plastic cups that they can't bring a canned beer out there and crack it and drink it. It's only what they buy inside. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've been there on a Wednesday, and I've seen the car shows and the folks having there, and I think it's great. The weather's unfortunately going to start getting a little bit colder on us, so unfortunately, you might not get a full season out of that. But I have no other questions. All the other departments weighed in, and everything else looks good, so.
Follow-up question?
Yes, sure.
The plastic cups, are they disposable cups or reusable, like things that you'd collect?
Good question. Disposable to start, we haven't brought that up. That's a good,
Noodle on that.
yeah.
All good.
All right. With that, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the Select Board approve the modification of local license to include the description of premise for an outdoor patio to include the outdoor area in the front parking lot, accessed from the front door and the sidewalk. Also, the rear parking lot area accessed off the existing outdoor patio area for food and alcoholic beverage. Service for Epigram Brew Company, 394 Middlesex Road, with the outdoor hours of Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That carries 400. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, everybody.
very much.
Good luck. All right, let's move to 5D, the Council on Aging appointment. Who has that one?
I do.
Thank you, Jackie.
I am pleased to inform you that Ms. Sherry Muse, who is here this evening with us, has delivered a letter of interest to serve on the Council of Aging. Currently, there are 2 vacancies on the council. Ms. Muse is a 32-year resident of Tyngsborough. She recently retired after a 30-year career as a nurse, working with a variety of individuals, including elderly patients. She is looking to be part of the solution in helping our elderly and aging populations.
Excellent. I will open it up to the board for any questions.
I don't have a question. I did look at the information that was provided. Great background. I'm so pleased that you're willing to volunteer for the town, and it's a position that dear, you know, is needed to be filled. So thank you very much.
Select Person Gilfus.
No questions. Very pleased, delighted to have you.
Thank you
So-
for stepping
so
up,
Cohen?
and we appreciate it. You know, we need people to step up to make things really work in this town, and, you know, it's amazing the number of people that volunteer, and we appreciate you volunteering, and I hope you enjoy your committee as you go through it. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you stepping up. I think that this is fantastic. Wildly qualified. That's the term. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the Select Board appoint Sherry Muse as a member of the Council on Aging, effective immediately through June 30th, 2027.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 400. Welcome, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, now let's go back to number 4, Town Manager's Report.
Thank you,
Take it
Mr.
away,
Chair.
Colin.
I'm happy to share that we opened bids on the Mass Works grant project that will see improvements to Kendall Road and the construction of a new roadway called Commerce Drive. Commerce Drive will provide access to the DPW yard, the park and ride, as well as the new warehouse project that is going on the Brock's property behind the park and ride. We opened the bids last week, and the lowest bidder was Newport Construction. Newport Construction has a very lengthy history of positive performance here in Tyngsborough. In fact, they're the bidder currently working on the States neighborhood. Their bid was $1.9 million, which will fall perfectly within the $2 million Mass Works grant. They did include a $45,000 alternate. So the way this project works, we're funding the first $2 million through the Mass Works grant, and we'll enter into a funding agreement with the private developer. Any cost beyond that $2 million will be borne by the private developer. So we finished the review of the bids today. We should issue a contract this week, and we can expect to see some mobilization on the site. Obviously, the heavy work will start in the next paving season, but you'll start to see some work happening over there very, very soon. I just want to give a shout out to our new town clerk, Jessica Brunel, on her first election last week. Tyngsborough saw a 15% voter turnout, which is a substantial increase from the 4% turnout we had in the May election for our town election and 11% for the presidential primary in March. I also want to thank the poll workers who spent their day making sure people's voices were heard, and our town clerk emeritus, Joanne Schiffers, who spent many hours in the weeks leading up to the election making sure that Jessica was ready. Just an interesting fact, of the 1,500 votes that were cast last Tuesday, 930 of those were done by mail ahead of time, and 30 were done in person as a part of early voting. So just wanted to highlight the amount of work that municipal clerks have to put in to achieve the mail-in voting, but also note that it's obviously worth it because a lot of people are taking advantage of that option. Some project updates. The work in the town center on the new pedestrian bridge, boardwalk, and observation deck is now complete. They were on site today making some very minor adjustments to the retaining wall, but it is done. There will be some additional final landscaping touches done this spring. Obviously, right now, they just loamed and seed, so it looks kind of bare, but I assure you in the spring it will look a lot better. The electrical work for the new town center digital sign was completed last week. The sign shipped midweek last week, and I expect that it's going to arrive and be ready for installation at some point, either at the end of next week or the week following that. When it's complete, it will replace that orange highway sign that had been there for 3 years and will allow us to better communicate with residents. That project was funded by CPC funding at the May 2024 annual town meeting. Phase 2 of the 2024 roadway improvements project is underway. Work to date included head wall repairs and drainage improvements. The town's contractor will commence pavement operations in the next 2 weeks with the goal of completing all of the work before November 15th. Last week, the engineering division approved a road opening permit for the work being done by the Drake Water Supply District in the Malvern Road area. This is the project that many residents are interested in that will see the replacement of a severely undersized water main with a more appropriately sized main. Work on the Sherburne Ave rec parcel is moving quite along. If you've driven by recently, you can kind of start to see where the different amenities will be. And I expect that the Recreation Committee will have a request, we'll talk about it a little bit later, to the CPC Committee at their meeting next week to advance kind of phase 2 of that project. The Bicentennial Field irrigation project is also moving along nicely. To date, the contractor has completed the first 4 phases of the project, which included the electrical work in the building, trenching to the wood line, and a cleanup of the disturbed area. The next phase is phase 5, which will deal with the trenching into the woods to where the new pump will sit, as well as the installation of the pump pad. This work will commence the week of September 23rd and should last about a week. After that, the only large remaining item is going to be the pump installation, which will occur once the new pump arrives. We will likely be able to test run the system before we have to winterize it. But we are very fortunate. A lot of the things that we were worried about, kind of where the uncertainties may have lied, never came to fruition, so I feel good about that project being complete soon. I don't have a formal update on the police department parking lot. We are working through some challenges with the contractor. We had a productive meeting with the contractor today. We have been weighing the town's options, and I think that we've landed on a place that will maintain the project budget, get the project complete, and deliver a product that will work for the police department. So we're almost there. The police have been very patient, but we're getting there. And then just a couple of dates to keep in mind. The Tyngsborough Fire Department will host the annual 9/11 Remembrance event on Wednesday morning at the First Responder Memorial, which is at the Tyngsborough Funeral Home. It'll start at about 9:45 a.m., but folks are asked to arrive at 9:30. The Board of Health is hosting its first Light the Night Vigil on Saturday at 6:30 p.m. at the Old Town Hall. The vigil will honor and remember those who lost their lives to substance use. They've already established a memory garden on the lawn of the Old Town Hall where residents can write the name of or a memory of a loved one lost to substance use and place it with the others. Residents may choose to do that ahead of the vigil or on Sunday, and we're thrilled that District Attorney Marion Ryan will be there on Saturday to participate. On September 21st, from 11 to 2, the Board of Health, the Police and Fire Departments, and the Department of Public Works will host our annual Health and Safety Fair at the elementary school. There are all kinds of activities for people of all ages, as well as a lot of informational booths from town departments and vendors as well. The Friends of the Tyngsborough Public Library will host their annual book sale on Saturday, October 5th from 8:30 a.m. to, I never finished that thought, I believe it's 2 p.m. here in the community room. And while the state primary is over, the town clerk's office has already shifted to the November 5th general election. The deadline to register to vote is October 26th, and the deadline to return your vote by mail application is the 29th. Residents will be able to vote early, actually the weeks of October 19th and the 28th. It's 2 weeks for the general election. A full schedule and more information will be available at tyngsboroughma.gov in the coming weeks. And that is all I have. And now I will, for the first time in ages, ask Kat to give her report.
Take it away.
All right. Well, as Colin says, I am thrilled to be back
Thank you.
after my 3-month maternity leave. I want to thank everyone, especially Colin and Jackie, who covered me while I was on my leave. I was really very thankful to have that time with baby Charlotte. So now she's with my husband for 2 months. Next Wednesday, September 11th, we'll be releasing an invitation for bids for the Scribner Road culvert replacement, and bids are due September 25th. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I will open it up to the board for questions or comments. Mr. Schneider.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Select Person Gilfus.
Mr. Town Manager, I'm glad to hear that the voter turnout was mostly because of the mail-in votes, because when we talked afterwards, I felt like the turnout was so low because I was there late in the day, but it was because people had already voted. So I'm so glad to see that. I'm glad that residents took advantage. And you did mention just the load that has. Did you get any indication from the town clerk, like if she had the sufficient resources to manage that? Like, how did she feel doing that?
Yes. One of the things that I will say to the state is while they often pass down lots of unfunded mandates, there are levels of reimbursement that we're able to seek. So for this one, we managed it entirely with our in-house staff, and we had already agreed to have our former town clerk help because it was the first election. Some of those costs we'll be able to reimburse from the state. If we are anticipating, and we can kind of play it as we go, for the November 5th general election, obviously we'll have more. We would be able to leverage some of our poll workers or registrars, and those costs could be reimbursed to the state. But for this one, we were able to leverage our own in-house staff, and I will just say, you know, while often the state doesn't do it, in this case, they do the right thing, and you can get reimbursed for some of those where necessary.
Are we going to have a ribbon cutting for the pedestrian bridge?
We will certainly plan something in the spring.
I want you to celebrate. It's been a
Yes,
big
yes.
project. And then my last comment is the annual book sale for the Friends. They are accepting books starting this week, so drop them off at the library. When you said that you think it's 2 p.m., I'm embarrassed to say that the signs have been in my kitchen for the last 2 weeks, and I don't know if it's 2 or 2:30. But yes, my wife is the president of the Friends, so drop off your books. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Cohen.
The new pedestrian bridge, are people able to walk on it at this time?
Yes.
They are.
We will, there's still some cones up, but the site will be completely cleared at some point this week, and yes, folks are. I'd ask that you stay off the area that was freshly loamed, but yes, that walkway is good. It's accessible, it meets all of the applicable regulations.
Okay, and the light and night vigil you have is Saturday at 6:30 PM? I
Correct.
take it that's this Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask about the pedestrian bridge. So, to be clear, people can walk on the paths and the bridge, don't walk on the areas that have been seeded.
Correct.
We don't wanna have something where we're gonna go and reseed it again in the spring.
Yes.
And everything is safe and good to go.
Yes, absolutely.
That was the only question I had. Thank you for, again, another very complete
know.
and detailed town manager's report. For all you folks that are on your podcasts, I suggest you look at it and you sign up for that one and you listen to it on your ride in to work or wherever you happen to be going.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Could I ask make one
Oh,
comment?
now you can, yeah, sure.
Well, because,
Go ahead.
so I worked on the polls on last Tuesday. Precincts 1 and 2 are done at the elementary school, I'm sorry, at the middle school, and the traffic flow is not ideal there.
Yep.
And I think there's a challenge ahead of us come November. There'll probably be much higher turnout than there would have been at this primary. We need to find a better way to have people coming in and out, because right now there's a single-sized door where people are going in and out. And we should work with the town clerk's office, with the school, and figure out a way that we could route traffic so that it's a single wave going in, a single wave going out, because otherwise it congregates at that one door, and it happens to be right where the voting machine is located.
Yeah.
So it's not an ideal place, but we do have to work on that.
Yeah, I did speak with Town Clerk Jessica Brunel today, and we're gonna plan to do a site walk over there in the next week or so.
Yeah.
There are some options, whether it's utilizing the existing middle school or even looking at using the high school. It's the same physical location,
Yeah.
and my understanding the school is closed on that day anyway. But yes, I mean, certainly we are facing unique challenges given the construction over there, so we will, and whatever our new plan that we develop is, will be properly communicated. There'll be adequate signage on the day of, and
Thank you.
duly noted.
Okay. All right, now let's bump to 5B, which is open and review fall town meeting warrant. Colin, are you taking us through
I
that?
sure will. All right. I will go through the warrant in a second, but just a high-level overview, including your packet, is a draft of the October 22nd, 2024 special town meeting warrant. So far, it only has 6 warrant articles, so it's not looking like it's going to be a lengthy town meeting. A couple disclaimers here. In executive session tonight, I'll ask the select board to hopefully ratify a new collective bargaining agreement with the dispatch union. If that is successful, the warrant will have to be updated to match the correct dollar amount in Article 1. The CPC article is a placeholder based on the applications that are pending before the CPC. They have not met yet. They're meeting for the first time on September 18th to consider these requests. So while they appear here as a visual, these are not yet recommendations from the Community Preservation Committee, just as a full disclosure. And the Zoning Review Committee will have at least one warrant article, I expect. It's possible they may have a second one. Both are related to updates they've been discussing around the sign bylaw. That committee, which Mr. Eldridge serves on, is meeting tomorrow night, and so I expect after that meeting, we'll have a final draft. I'll work with our planning office to schedule the public hearings that are required, and obviously update the warrant accordingly. Some key dates, based on the timeline to post the warrant, which, as you'll remember, for a special town meeting is 14 days before. We'd be looking at setting the deadline for citizens petitions as September 26, 2024. By 4 p.m. to the office of the town clerk. That'll give us time to have town council review them before I ask the select board to vote to post the warrant at its meeting on October 7th. We would host a pre-town meeting information session on October 15th at 6 p.m. here in the community room. That's what we've been doing for the last few years now. It's the Tuesday before town meeting. And then that fall town meeting would be on Tuesday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. again at the Tyngsborough Elementary School. So I will, actually, if we could open the warrant first, that probably makes the most sense, and I've
Yes.
got a recommended motion.
Please. I'll entertain a motion to open the warrant.
Mr. Chair, I move the select board open the warrant for the October 22nd, 2024 special town meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, that carries 4-0-0. Okay, Colin, take us through what you got.
Fantastic. Article 1 is an appropriation for the general fund for fiscal year 2025. This is the language that the Department of Revenue requires we use, but what I want to be abundantly clear about is that we are not proposing to raise taxes to fund these. Every year when we present the budget to town meeting, we under-project our local receipts, money we collect through building permits, licensing fees, etc. And so the money here is money the town is going to collect based on policies, procedures, your levy limit already in place. But because it wasn't included in the budget the town meeting saw, they have to vote to allow us to spend the money. So I just want to be abundantly clear for folks at home that we are not talking about raising taxes here beyond what you're already expecting based on the fiscal year 25 budget that was set at town meeting. This will come from local receipts, which as a practice, we always very, very much underestimate for the warrant article in May. The first two items are, I'm fully, accepting my mistake here. The towns came into an agreement with the sewer commission for both phases of the sewer expansion that in order to reduce the amount of money being assessed to users of the sewer, the town's general fund would pick up a portion of the debt service every year. And our sewer administrator, who is absolutely fantastic, sent me the debt service schedule very early on last year, and I thought, that's very helpful. She's letting me know what the sewer enterprise fund is paying. If I had read it a little more detailed, I would have known this was our obligation. So the short part here is that I failed to include this in our debt service, which was presented to town meeting, and so we need to appropriate that in October. It's not funding anything new. This is money that the town is already committed to paying for. The final two items deal with collective bargaining agreements that the town, one of which has already been settled, which is for our superior union, and one of which will hopefully be ratified by this board this evening. Those contracts expire June 30th. We began negotiating shortly before town meeting, but the new contracts weren't ratified before the budget was presented. And so while we included I think 2% increase, 2.5% increase in the budget for salaries, the contract that we settled at will require an additional infusion of funds. So for the superior union, we're looking at $23,567.34. Again, that's to fund the recently settled collective bargaining agreement, which is in effect through fiscal year 2027. On the communication salary, these are our emergency communication specialists, which work out of the police department. I expect that number is something like $21,000, $22,000. Again, it'll be ratified by the board this evening. These are for salaries. They'll be put into the police department's salary budget. And until town meeting approves these appropriations, we can't pay the increases to those officers. So those are, I think, relatively straightforward funding articles. Again, we're not adding anything new to the budget, and we're not adding positions. These are funding our current obligations. Article 2 is an article that we see every year. This is to approve prior fiscal year bills. State law prohibits us from paying bills that were incurred in a previous fiscal year using the current fiscal year's budget unless town meeting approves it. So we have an invoice to McGovern Ford, an invoice from our Council on Aging for Tri-State Mechanical, as well as 2 National Grid bills from the Sewer Enterprise Fund. National Grid, the high level here is this happens to us every couple of years where one of our meters, due to the amount of electricity it generates, they basically stop assessing you your actual bill and they charge you kind of a system generated flat rate. And then 2 or 3 years later, they'll go back and they'll do a full review of your account and then they send you a bill and say, hey, surprise, once we dug into it, you actually owe us this much more. So in this case, these are from fiscal year 22, 23, and 24. All of them are from the Sewer Enterprise Fund. And for all 4 of these bills, they will be paid out of the current fiscal year 25 budget. They are not an additional appropriation. Article 3 is an appropriation from the Community Preservation Committee Fund. Again, these have not yet gone to the CPC, so I'll just high level. The library has submitted a request for just shy of $50,000 to perform a series of preservation projects. As many of you may know, they have a pretty cool special collections room in there that has all kinds of historic documents and reports. And so they're looking to get some of those professionally restored and also maintained in a manner that are gonna make it available to folks so they can look at it. They also are working with our historic commission to develop an oral history of the Winslow and Littlefield Library buildings. So the CPC will consider that request. And then we're also expecting that the Recreation Committee will submit a $500,000 request for what's being called Phase 2 of the Sherburne Road open space parcel. That's the parcel of land that was donated to the town by the Toll Brothers. The current phase of work, which we're working on now, includes all of the sport court amenities with the exception of the volleyball. That wasn't within the budget. Some of the items that we couldn't afford in Phase 1 that we'd be hoping to do in Phase 2 include the new pavilion, which would provide an outdoor gathering space for that side of the bridge, which doesn't really exist right now. Some landscaping work, hopefully replacing what Toll Brothers did with that stone dust walkway throughout the parcel with an asphalt walkway. And if possible, looking at irrigation solutions over there. I think that's gonna be a little more costly than would be included in here. So I'm expecting that will come forward. And again, CPC is meeting on September 18th to consider that request. Article 4 is also a CPC article. You may remember that in May, it authorized up to $350,000 for the potential acquisition of what was then an affordable unit at 10 Merrimack Way, Unit C. Because of the way that the sale went down, the town couldn't make an offer on the property until it had funding in place, which couldn't take place until town meeting voted on May 7th. The auction happened 2 days earlier. We had asked town meeting to approve this in case the auction was unsuccessful. We could directly negotiate with the bank. Unfortunately, on May 5th, the unit sold, or it closed on May 6th. It sold to a private developer. It fell off of our affordable housing inventory, and so now that $350,000 is not necessary. Under the CPC regulations and its governing statute, that money would just sit here until town meeting affirmatively votes to return it to its original source, which in this case was our fund balance. The reason I say that it was our fund balance is because in order to make the $500,000 request in Article 3 work, we would essentially be transferring $350,000 from this request into the other request, and that is allowable because it's not coming from, say, the affordable housing bucket or the historic preservation bucket. Article 5 is a pretty straightforward one. As many, if not all of the board members are aware, this summer we dealt with substantial issues on Lake Muscuppick. Kudos to the Lake Muscuppick Association for replacing our police boat and to our police department for having a very regular presence on the water. One of the biggest challenges that we encountered is that because a lot of people are coming to the lake who don't live on the lake, they'll spend the whole day there, and so when they launch their boat or their jet skis, they have to move the trailer, they park it somewhere far away, and so for the remainder of the day, when they're not on the vessel, they're beaching it on one of the many public shorelines. You can think of the area right in front of Lakeside Pizza and Sun City. We don't currently have a bylaw that prohibits it, and so while the police will ask them to move, they have nothing to enforce. And so what we're proposing here, and this has the support of the Lake Association as well as the police department, is adding a section to our general bylaws, Article 10 on motorboats, which simply says that no motorboat shall be parked or beached along any public shoreline along Lake Muscuppick except for in the case of emergency. This would also implement a fine. The first offense would be $100 and subsequent offenses would be $250. And the only other edit here is that what was Section 6 and now becomes Section 7, our bylaws, this particular section hasn't been updated since I would assume probably the early 1980s, and it limited the penalty for all the other rules to $20. In talking with the police department, we don't generally deal with any of these issues anymore, and so I'm not proposing that we change that. So we just add language here that says that the only violations that could exceed that are the ones outlined above. This has been reviewed by council. We also have talked to the interim Dracut town manager about asking Dracut to adopt a similar bylaw because, as you know, Dracut shares Lake Muscuppick with us. It's a big problem on the parcel of land I talked about in front of Lakeside, but it's an even bigger problem on the Dracut side by the town beach. And we've done some things. The Lake Association installed a larger swimming area, which kind of limited the space you have to pull up. But as our police department points out, any shoreline is important so that if they are taking somebody who is injured in the middle of the lake to the shore to meet an ambulance, they have to have a place to do so. And then Article 6 is a placeholder for the zoning bylaw amendment, again, relative to the sign bylaw. And a lot of that is housekeeping, clarifying what was some pretty substantial ambiguities, nothing super dramatic, unless Mr. Eldridge thinks differently.
No, I mean, it's cleaning up, it's continuing with the, making it easier to read. I think the only thing that we're adding in with the sign bylaws is closing up some loopholes, particularly around bulletin boards, the big ones around on Route 3. I think we're talking about greatly limiting that so that we don't have more. Right now, it's a little ambiguous. So tightening up the bylaws, but most of the other things, it's more clarification of items, but it makes things easier to understand within our bylaws.
Excellent. Those are the articles.
All right, questions from the board?
I just have just an observation on Article 10 for motorboats, and I know we're adding that Section 6, which will have a more significant fine. I'm just dismayed that for all the other things that are listed there, we only fine people $20. That hardly seems as a deterrent for any of the other types of violations other than parking. So if there's a way that we could update that, you were saying it probably hasn't been updated in a long time.
Yeah.
That $20 sort of reflects that.
Some of them, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like Section 4, if you're operating under the influence, our fine is not the issue.
Right.
They have bigger fines there, so I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure that some of these, I think if there's any of them that are bigger, we should just not have them be applicable to that, or maybe you put a fine in there on each one of these. I assume they're just trying to go for simple at this point.
And this is also, and perhaps I'll add this to the list, one of the things we should do is go through our entire town's general bylaw to really identify places like this. Like a great instance here, Section 1, no motorboat may be operated under power within a distance of 200 feet from the shore of Pine Haven Beach, which is the town beach. That one is probably also now regulated by some additional state law, similar to the operating under the, or, dangerously. So this section, if we had a full legal review on some pieces, is probably super outdated. For the purposes of Section 7, we can certainly just eliminate penalty not more than $20 fine. I mean, like I said, we're not issuing fines for any of the other things. If it's operating dangerously, they're being cited in accordance with state law, not citing the specific town bylaw. But because there lacks a state law that would prohibit them from parking, this is the section that we would refer to give a ticket.
Okay, thank you. Yep, that clarifies it.
And relative to that, just in case we end up with somebody at the AG's office who's particularly, they want to get into the details a little bit more than they probably should, we should clean that up, because they may say, oh, well, this section isn't going to be applicable and this section isn't there. We've run into that before.
Yes.
So we might just want to let's review those
Yep.
other sections and make sure that they're cleaned up. That's a good point.
Yep.
Other items, questions, comments?
I'm trying to remember where I read this, and I don't remember if it was in the Lowell Sun, or if we had a conversation about it, or if it was on Facebook. But I wish I had prepped for this better. There's a conversation about personal watercraft.
Yes, I'm aware of the conversations. You read it on Facebook, I'm sure.
Okay.
And we have received, the town clerk, our office has gotten at least one call, I know the town clerk's office has. At a certain point, the dispute over issues on Lake Muscoppic and the perceived lack of cooperation from Drake by some residents sparked a very fervent debate that involved Representative Gary about how dangerous the waters have become. Obviously, we have a limited ability to be on the water. We don't have an officer assigned permanently to the lake. One of the suggestions that Representative Gary made in a Facebook forum was that if residents were concerned about, say, personal watercraft like jet skis, a citizen's petition could be filed in Drake and in Tyngsborough seeking to, by way of a bylaw, prohibit the use of those watercraft on a lake. It is not something the town is considering. I think I've heard loud and clear from some residents who have communicated to our office that as people who live on the lake and have invested in personal watercraft, they would be super opposed. The added challenge is I don't see how you could do it in Tyngsborough and not do it in Drake. And an added layer to that is that it's considered a great pond, I think is the term. And so there's some state environmental regulations that cover it as well. So it is something that I know we've received inquiries about. It would require 100 signatures for a special town meeting. And again, I think you'd be hard pressed to find residents of the lake who are the ones really seeking some action here to calm down the issue. I just can't see that there'd be support for it. But certainly anyone can file a citizen's petition if they have enough signatures.
Thank you, Colin. I think it was Representative Gary's post, yep. Great.
Select
I have
Person
no
Cohen.
questions at this time.
You can certainly ask more questions as we go through this process. Yeah, all stuff that we're aware of. Looks good. Looks like it'll be a fairly straightforward town meeting, hopefully. And we will discuss further as we get closer.
Absolutely.
All right, you have what you need so far?
Sure do.
The warrant is open, so why don't we let's talk fiscal, I'm having a hard time. Fiscal year '26.
I am fully prepared.
Let's talk fiscal year '26 budget.
I've included in your packet a draft of the fiscal '26 budget schedule, which encompasses the operating budget as well as some points on capital. No action is required by the board this evening, but I wanted to really start thinking ahead so that internally we can start planning for what we need to do. A couple notes here, the Capital Asset Management Committee and FinCom will need to meet to confirm their actual meeting dates. So where you see a date in here, that's kind of the week we're targeting, but obviously they'll have to set their dates. And we have there was a resignation on the Finance Committee, which resulted in a vacancy on the Capital Asset Management Committee. So they're meeting next week to appoint their representative, so some of this will move around. I also wanted to note that due to Easter Monday being on April 21st, it is possible the board may need to hold a special meeting on April 14th to post the warrant if this warrant will include any special town meeting items due to the time constraints. Alternatively, to avoid a meeting on the 14th, we could just be very aggressive and aim to have the board finalize the warrant early, which would be on April 7th. This schedule mirrors almost perfectly what we did last year from a board's perspective. It has us starting with departments earlier, so that we'll have all of the department requests ahead of the holidays. We made do last year, certainly. I think that because all of our collective bargaining agreements will have been settled by then, fire is the only one that's outstanding, and we're getting started in a couple weeks. I think it just makes sense to get started earlier. I also wanted to propose to the board having an earlier tri-board meeting so that there would be 2 tri-board meetings. We had one in April of last year, and I thought it was productive to have the legislators here to talk about kind of the state funding. But given that fiscal '26 will be the first year of the full impact of the middle school debt on residents, and given the renewed conversations about planning for a public safety building, coupled with the fact that we'll now need to return to our past practice of borrowing for at least a portion of our capital plan, I thought that it made sense to have a earlier tri-board meeting where before we finalize the operating budget, there's a real discussion between the Finance Committee, the School Committee, and the Select Board, and also a really deep conversation about what our long-term debt strategy will be. We're coming up on, if my records are correct, fiscal '26 and '27 are the last years of the known 2.7% increase with the school department. And so I think it's important that we start talking with them about what our expectations will be moving forward, because that will certainly play a role into what gets approved. So again, no action is required this evening, but that is one of the new items that I've added, because I just think if we wait until April 8th, by then we've really already have had to have the budget finalized, and this will give us an opportunity to get real serious about collaboration amongst the 3 boards.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think we should start to talk to them about that and how do we work better as groups. I think my guess is that it would be a welcome discussion. I haven't heard anybody that indicates that when we get together for the 3 groups to go through some of these that it's not productive. It's so it would be good to have like more of an operational tri-board rather than, the one where the legislators are here. It's more us talking to them. I don't see that as much operationally with us, so that's certainly fine. It's good with me. I think let's just make sure that we can make that happen. I think giving everybody else, 4 or 5 months' notice probably should work.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any thoughts? I mean, I think on the budgets, if we can go as early as possible and start thinking about, how we're gonna manage some of this stuff, let's have those discussions, because they won't fix themselves.
Yeah, and I agree, I think we have to have a meeting on the 14th to do the budget. If we try to push that to the 7th and have a tri-board meeting with the legislators, and we're trying to approve the budget, that just seems an overload for one meeting.
Yeah.
It almost makes it necessary to have a meeting on the 14th.
When is Patriots' Day?
Good question, Mr. Chair.
I hope not the 14th. That would be awfully
My guess
embarrassing,
is
huh?
that,
This is the 7th,
is it the 7th?
hopefully.
No,
Hopefully.
I think it's the
It'll be
14th.
after.
Don't say
It
that.
could be the 21st.
Well, I have to be here anyway, so.
I think it's the 21st, actually.
Fantastic.
21st, yep.
And we are
I knew that.
Yeah, you knew
I
that.
knew that going into this.
perfect.
I think that's why we ended up with the 7th anyway.
Yes.
Was because we were navigating around that. Okay, but yeah, I mean, we can certainly do that as we get closer to determine, all right, do we need to have some meetings on that? But if we can get at least float that we'd like to have a meeting in February and one in April, and float those dates out there, I think if we can get it on people's calendars, we should be all set. Good,
Excellent.
all right. Anything else relating to that one?
That is all.
All right, well, with that, I will open it up for select board reports. You know what, why don't we start down this end? Mr. Cohen, did you want
I
to go
have
first?
nothing tonight.
Oh, good.
I have nothing either.
Person Gilfus.
Going back to the polls this past week, I've worked at the polls a number of elections. The mood at the polls is very positive, right? People use it as a time to get together with neighbors, and it's very friendly, and it's very congenial. And I just hope that we can maintain that type of atmosphere at our polls at every election. It just makes the work, for the poll workers, for the people that are voting, for everyone there, it just makes it a very positive experience. So I commend everyone who does that and contributes to that, at the voting place, and just encourage everyone to continue that as we move forward.
Yeah, it's a great message. I mean, essentially, the people that are going there to vote, they're exercising their fundamental right.
Right.
So it should be positive. And the folks that are working the polls, they're working an awful long time. And so, it's not going to hurt you to smile and be nice. Certainly support your candidates, whoever it is, but we're all neighbors. So it should definitely be a positive. That's a fantastic message.
Are there opportunities to volunteer more? Are they looking for more poll workers, do you know?
You'd have to ask the town clerk. I know each party appoints so many, or recommends so many names, and then there are so many sort of at-large positions. It'll be a busy election, as we can all imagine, so I presume that there's going to be more opportunities for volunteering.
Talk to the
Do
town
you know,
clerk?
Colin?
Mr. Schneider summarized it perfectly. There's a formula that we've had to use that, takes names from both sides. So certainly anyone that's interested should reach out to the town clerk's office, because even if it's not being a poll worker, there may be things with mail-in voting or things earlier that they could use help with. And depending on where we end up, maybe it makes sense to have volunteers, if they're available, be sort of ambassadors to help people find where the polls are if we do have to make adjustments.
Nice.
Great.
Excellent. I had all kinds of things that I wanted to remind people about, but Colin already did it in the town manager's report, so
That good.
just make sure you watch the town manager's report and you'll be all up to date. With that, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move that we enter executive session under exemption 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Mass COP Local 517 Dispatch Union and Michael Ferris et al. Versus Tyngsborough Planning Board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
I am also in favor. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Our next meeting is September 23rd. Look forward to seeing you then.